So just talk to the glowing mirror and it'll record what I say? Huh, crazy. When does it start? Oh. Um my name is Juliet Lovejoy Whitehorn. And while my story may not be the most pleasant that you've ever heard, I've been informed that it might be an important one. When I was roughly 14 or 15 years old, my family decided to make the move from New England to Kansas. Um, the journey was honestly terrible. But things didn't really pick up whenever we finally made it to Kansas. For the move, my older brother went out ahead of us, and then on the actual trip, it was my mother, Julia, my father, Reverend Irving Lovejoy, and my younger sister, Edith, who was maybe 3 or 4 at the time. Um, but we finally made it to Kansas around 1854, and my father was my mother and my younger sister and myself ended up boarding at the American Hotel in Lawrence, Kansas, while my father went ahead to scope out the Big Blue River and the land that they were developing around there to try and find us a place to stay long term. The boarding house was so tiny and it wasn't very clean. Um, my mother would spend her days doing some sewing work to pay for her boarding fees, and I would wait tables. Um, After the boarding fees, my mother made about $2 a week, and I made about $1.50. So we barely had money for necessities, and on top of that, like I said, our accommodations weren't clean, and my sister Edith came down with the measles. Um, and my father was supposed to come back pretty quickly and then take us to where we were going to stay, and we were gonna have a small cabin. Um, but the days just kept going by, and Edith kept getting sicker, and my mother seemed to constantly be in a state of anxiety and sadness and just the overwhelming concern for Edith's health. Um, Before we ultimately left the American Hotel, at least 2 people died of the measles in the boarding house, and Edith's health was on a very quick decline. Um, Eventually, we struck out and started to make our way to meet our father along the road, but unfortunately, Edith never got the care that she needed. We were never able to get her strength back up, and she died while we were trying to get to our home. Um, and which was very difficult on myself, on me, but especially on my mother. I don't think my mother ever fully recuperated from that. When we finally made it to Manhattan, our accommodations were not really all that much better than the boarding house. We had a balloon house, which was essentially a prefabricated frame, and there wasn't any insulation, and it was a very rough winter. So it was freezing, freezing cold. Like, imagine the coldest you've ever been, and times that by like 3. Um, And on top of that, my mother had given birth to a baby. So in that freezing winter, she was trying to bundle up Irving Jr. in blankets and furs. And lo and behold, my father had actually returned back to the Lawrence area and left my mother alone with the baby in this balloon house and with me. That being said, I didn't stay in the house very long. We arrived in about 1855, not long after Edith passed, and I actually got married in March of 1856. I was 16 years old at the time, and my mom warned me not to get married young, but you know what? I knew better. So I ended up marrying Dr. Whitehorn. And while I was in Manhattan, there, gosh, wow, it changed pretty rapidly. And it was kind of a curious feeling where there's something being erected around you, but you know the price tag associated to it. You know the personal loss. You know the pain and the struggle. Because believe it or not, it's not easy. Making something new, making something so big is never easy. And on top of that, we started hearing stirs of war and cries for war. And so it was a really unsettling time. It was a difficult time. And at the age of 20, I came down with typhoid fever, which was a bit of an issue in Kansas at the time. And don't get me wrong, like I see the irony. I was married to the town doctor and died of a disease. But we didn't really know how to treat it as well back then. And there were a lot of different discussions about like water therapies and whatnot. The gist is that I died, and so did a lot of other people of typhoid fever. Um, and then fast forward to what year did you say it was? 2017? Whew. Um, and I wake up to some crazy lady chanting about arise, spirits, and there were candles involved. And between you and me, I think she's a witch. Help me. But anywho, it has been lovely speaking with you today, weird glowing mirror box. Um, I would like to say that it's been a pleasure, but mostly it's been awkward. I'm going to head back to Sunset Cemetery now.